Hello everyone, and welcome back to another behind the scenes here at MUNCH. For those of you who know me, welcome back. And for those of you who do not know me, my name is Zeenat Amiri and I am an art educator. And you're probably wondering, what is an art educator actually? So I work in the art education department, but we're way more than that. We're not only art education, we're art interpretation and art mediation as well. So we work extensively with texts that are within an exhibition, and we also work on other platforms where one of them is digital. And we work towards different focus groups and to ensure the quality of different art experiences are great. So that's the work that we do here. And you're probably wondering, where am I right now, right? I'm inside of MUNCH in one of our exhibitions. So our team has developed one exhibition that is digital that you can catch on our website. And then there's two that we have here, physical ones. The first is a photo exhibition. I'm not going to go in there because we will have someone else who will talk about this in another video. And then we have this one, which is Yonder Edvard Munch and Nature. So this exhibition is split in two rooms. You're going to visit this room afterwards, but we're starting in what is called the dark room. And this dark room, we're going to meet how Edvard Munch works consciously with landscape and with nature, and how that is experienced by the subject in the painting. And you're probably wondering here, so what's going on here? How does this relate to nature, where we have a woman who is inside of a house? So yonder, the title, refers to something that is far away. And it's more poetic. It's more of the where you find yourself in a space, and if you're inside a space or outside a space, and what that does to you, the physical and the psychological, I would say. And in this case, a painting called Melancholy from 1900s to 1901, around that time. Edvard Munch painted this patient who is at a mental institution. And this relates to nature in the way that the window here is used. So let's look a bit closer at this painting. We start with the vacant stare in the eyes of the woman. So this vacant stare that we see here, we see that she's quite dark in the eyes, and she's looking inwards into herself. And Edvard Munch cannot seem to have any contact with her. And then we move to the window. Notice that the windows here, they kind of look, it's closed, but it looks like bars. And then we have the light from the window that is on the wall on the other side. And that warmth from the wall isn't necessarily reflected in how she's experiencing that warmth. Rather, she's not feeling that warmth. And in that case, what I am interpreting this painting is that this is a painting that can feel empty and sad. Of course, it could also be interpreted as something that is cozy and warm, considering the warm room. But in this case, I want you all to notice the vacant stare and what is going on outside. So outside, we see that it's winter and that is quite empty. So if we connect that to the vacant stare in her eyes, we could say that, well, maybe this could be interpreted as someone who is not necessarily feeling that well. And then we have this wonderful flower. Look at the flower. Our gazes are pushed towards that flower because of the tablecloth that the flower is placed on. There's a strange pattern on that tablecloth. Do you see that? And that same gaze that we have on the flower, this patient also has on the flower. So our gazes meet with this painting. And another interesting aspect with this painting is that it was also called Laura at some point. And some people thought that this was the younger sister of Edvard Munch. Actually, she was 4 years younger than Edvard Munch. And it's still a debate today whether it's her or not, considering what the other sister said, Ingrid, who said this is probably not how Edvard Munch would paint his own sister. But alas. So as I mentioned, we are now in the dark room, and what we will be doing now is to move into the darker space, because we're now moving outside. So we have now seen a woman who is entrapped, a woman who is trapped inside, but we're moving outside, but we're not sure what that entails. Is it just all happy endings? No, not necessarily. What we're going to see here is my favorite wall. And on this favorite wall, what we see is a movement into a forest that isn't necessarily a happy place, or maybe it's a scary place. All of these paintings that you will see on this wall precisely have these spires. So these trees, when they're put together, they look like spires, similar to a cathedral. And then we have a sense of, there's a spot in the woods that looks like a light. It looks like it's coming from, there's a magical source of light within the woods. So it's not, is it a water or is there something magical in it? And then there's a third aspect, that these trees that Edvard Munch put together, not only do they have a sense of spirituality in them, or a sense of religious, it's put in a religious context, considering that they look like a cathedral, but there's also the sense that they look like supernatural creatures. They look like trolls. There's something troll-like with them. And then we move to the culmination of all of these, which is this wonderful painting. And in this painting, I want all of you to look at this forest and what's going on inside of this forest and outside. So these two creatures, you can interpret them as brother and sister. It could be Hansel and Gretel. It could be whoever. But the interesting part with them is that one is looking forward and the second one is looking towards the forest. And the viewpoint here is that we're so small in this case, and the magnitude of the forest is gigantic. It does look like something huge for them from their point of view. And then there's the same sense of the trees being put together looking like a cathedral. And then we have this strange white foam or a creature that is behind the forest. What is that precisely? Is it a troll or is it a fire? What we do know is that everything in our bodies tells us that we shouldn't walk into that forest, and that boy is noticing the danger in that forest. All right, everyone. So as I mentioned, this exhibition is split in two. We're in a dark space, and what's going on here is that we're going to the threshold of this exhibition, and in this threshold, we're going to meet the scream. But I'm not going to talk so much about it. I don't want to use that space because there are two reasons. First of all, we're having a live stream here, and we're live streaming, we're streaming the scream 24/7. And second of all, we're going to have talks here in the future. So what we're going to have here is talks with me and curators and other people like conservators who will talk about the scream. So follow our live stream. It's on our website, so please follow that. That's fun. But what I will focus on here is the sense of how Edvard Munch consciously used landscape to speak to the inner emotional life. Right? So if we move closely and we look at the colors and the movement and the twisting and the turnings of the sky and the colors, we see that Edvard Munch is trying to convey a particular emotion. And that emotion is what we all know to be anxiety, the fear of not knowing what's going to happen. And the figure itself, he's also twisted. So the scream figure and the landscape, they're moving in such a way, and Edvard Munch used this to express the inner emotional life, and this is the reason to why it was sort of the precursor to expressionism, to express what's going on on the inside to what's going on to the outside. However, what we're going to do now is that we're going to move inside of the next room, which is way happier and is way more optimistic. And we're moving from the inside all the way to the outside. And we're going to see one of the next walls that are one of my favorite walls in this exhibition. And remember, this exhibition is not put chronologically, so it's not in chronological order. So it's not like we begin in the early late 1800s and then early 1900s. No, this is all mixed up. So what you're going to see here is a mixture of everything that Edvard Munch painted, and you wouldn't believe the things that he painted from the different times of his life. Look at this beauty. There are flowers here. There are bushes, there are greenery, and so many beautiful colors and contrasts to each other, which makes you think immediately of summer and of spring. You get this sense of openness, that we're out in the open and we're taking in all of this beauty that we have been bereft of, to be honest. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I have been waiting for summer for a very long time. And I feel like many of us has really felt the way that this has been something that is not necessarily a part of our lives in this time. But now finally we can return to nature and we can return to the beauty that surrounds us. And in this exhibition, which I find to be the perfect summer exhibition, we see just that. We see a beautiful reflection of that in the variation and the diversity of Edvard Munch's styles and ways of painting. You wouldn't think that this was painted by Munch, would you? I don't know. What do you think? I think that this painting is quite typical Munch in terms of composition. So this is in open air, and this is from late 1800s, from 1891. And so this is one of the earlier paintings by Edvard Munch. So you wouldn't believe that this was something that was painted by Munch, because what we're used to are his simplest paintings, where you have these dark inner, battling emotions. But here we see something beautiful. So let's get a closer look at the brush strokes here. So this was, of course, painted in an impressionist style. What we see here are short brush strokes, and these brush strokes are very pointillistic in a way in terms of how he moved them constantly. And this impression leaves us with an idea that Edvard Munch saw something that was windy, it was beautiful, it was clear, and this was a clear break from the realism that Edvard Munch was taught to paint in. And what we see here, something fresh, something beautiful, and then we have this woman in the front, and then we have the landscape in the back. And then finally we have this greenery on the left side that kind of frames the woman in. In this way, I would say that this is typical Edvard Munch in terms of the composition, that we have a woman in the forefront and then we have the background here, which is great. But then we have my favorite painting on this wall, which is one that we passed. So these are fruit flowers in bloom in wind. And what we see here is, this is from approximately from 1917 to 1919, from between that time. And what we do know is that Edvard Munch had moved to Ekeli and he had spent time there for 28 years. This is a long time. And what Edvard Munch was given when he moved into this place was an abundance of fruits and vegetables and a greenery around him. So Edvard Munch didn't have to move abroad to have all this inspiration given to him and to paint something interesting. He found it within himself, and he found it in his garden at Ekeli. So I want us to move a bit closer so you can see what's going on in this painting. There's a wildness to this painting. Look at the brushstrokes. You can sense that this is windy, not only from the brushstrokes, but also from the colors and the shifting of the colors. And I find this painting to be explosive in terms of the ways that the colors are shifting in every turn. And we have this lovely view of the pinks and the greens together, and honestly, this is one of the things that I miss the most when I thought about spring and summer, this wildness of fruits, the wildness of nature, and the beauty in nature as well. So what we see here is that Edvard Munch doesn't only turn inwards to look for how nature can depict what you're feeling on the inside, but he looks outwards to how nature can also affect us. So this is a pure landscape painting of Edvard Munch where we do not see any people or houses. It's just pure landscape, which is great in my opinion. So what we're going to do now, we're going to finish off with a landscape painting which has to do with one of the activities that I'm looking forward to the most this summer. And that activity is, of course, swimming. So Edvard Munch, he painted lots of bathing motifs from late 1800s and early 1900s. And what we're seeing here is a series of paintings that are from the late 1800s. So they're split in two. We have the first one over there, which is women or girls who are bathing. And look at the movement of the water and how the water is moving around them. There's I would say there's a sense of like naivety in this painting. These girls are happy, they're playing along with each other. There's a sense of innocence in this painting. We have someone painting or bathing and swimming in the background there, and then we have these girls who are splashing the water towards them. And then we have my favorite, which is on this side, the bathing boys. And in the bathing boys, what we see are these boys who are frog-like. Let's move a bit closer and look at this frog-like paintings. So can you see that this boy, he's very red in the face, so clearly he is touched by the sun. He has a slight sunburn, but he's moving in the water and he's sort of floating, which makes him look like a frog slightly. And then we have the little boy in the back there who is swimming out from the frame, and he's swimming out in a way that he's spreading his legs, sort of like a frog in this sense as well. But then we have the silent figure who is looking outside and he's sort of contemplating, and we can see the reflection here in the water as well, which is quite beautiful. There's a sense of stillness in the water. The boy seems, the two boys seem to be floating, but the standing figure is standing there away from the sun with his sunburned face. It's a beautiful photo, and there's a sense of lightness in this painting and a weightlessness in this painting, which I am looking forward to in the summer. So that's the end of this guide. Make sure to follow what we're doing in the future on our homepage, on our website, because there will be lots of exciting talks here in the future. We hope you enjoyed. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Q&A. You've probably met me before. I hope so. My name is Zeenat Amiri, and I am the art educator that you have been meeting in these behind-the-scenes videos that we've made at MUNCH. And I am very happy to answer all of your questions today. There's a lot to walk through here. So one of the questions that I've received here is from James, London. How do you get into your profession? So I'm an art educator, and first, I'm just going to give you my whole backstory here. So I started with my bachelor in English, culture, and language and literature. And I did my bachelor in that, and then I decided to do art history. And in art history, we had a class called art education, who was taught by someone you have met in the previous behind the scenes here at on this page. by Signe Andersen, who was my teacher there. So I did art education, and then I also did my master's. My master's was surprisingly on something something very modern, or some visually very modern. I wrote a master's on a comic book from the 1980s and the architectural spaces used by those characters. And then I also worked at the Akershus Fortress, where I did mediation of military history for different kinds of audiences. And then I ended up working at Munch. So I worked at Munch, which is a lot of fun, I have to say. And then slowly but surely, I kind of gradually worked my way up, you would say. I had regular guides, and then I worked with VIP and press. So I've worked a lot with Viking. We've had lots of Viking guides, and usually I'm the one to, me and someone else, we take the big groups of people around the exhibition and also behind the scenes at the MUNCH Museum, so that people can sit down, have a cup of coffee and talk and just spend time with the museum itself, which is fun. Okay, Mitchell from Lafayette Hill asks, how do you pronounce Munch? That's how you pronounce it, Munch. So Edvard Munch, it's a lot of fun because many people say Munch, which is not the case. But also in Norway, there's a huge discussion, or there has been a discussion in the past, where the family members of Munch, not his own children, but his siblings' children, that they were discussing if it was Munch or Munch, which is fun. But we say Munch. Some people say Munch. That's fine as well. Dana from Lake Charles asks, how many artists' works are displayed? So when many people only think that we only have the art of Edvard Munch in our museum, but we have more than that. We have the collection of 3 others. So Edvard Munch's art, he wrote in his will in 1940 that he wanted to pass it on to the municipality of Oslo. And this was in 1940, and remember, this was during the war, and so sorry for fanning myself, it's quite hot here, it's a heat wave. And it was very important for Edvard Munch that his art survived, that the Nazi Germans didn't destroy his art, which he was afraid they would do, because his art had been called degenerate art. And so he gave it to the municipality of Oslo, and in total it was 28,000 art objects. And from those, it was around up to 1,200 paintings. We have 7,000 drawings by Munch. And there's, of course, we have to remember that he also did some graphic work. Some graphic work, I mean, a lot of it. He printed a lot of different kinds of prints. And we have around 18,000 prints. And as well as up to, I think, 14 sculptures. Many people don't know this, that he also did sculptures, which is fun. All right. Next question. Oh, well, sorry. And there's the other 3 artists. They're Norwegian artists. And one of them was a good friend of Edvard Munch, who also bought a lot of his art during the time he was alive. Rolf Stenersen was his name, who also wrote biography on Munch as well. And he had a lot of Edvard Munch's art in his collection, so that just gave us even more, which is a blessing. All right. John from London says, thank you for this presentation. How long have you been a curator for? Do you provide guides at the MUNCH Museum? So I am not a curator. I am an art educator. So I work with programming for specific groups, and I develop formats for guides. So we have different kinds of ways of talking about art. So we don't only do art education where we teach art to classes or groups from classes from schools that come to visit us, but we also have VIP, we have press. So there are different ways of speaking about art to different kinds of groups. So we develop certain ways and a route for our audiences to walk through, so that we ensure that every group, no matter age and where they're from, that they enjoy it thoroughly and they leave the MUNCH Museum touched by the art. That is our goal. Let's see here. Sharon from Tomwater, I hope that I pronounced that correctly. Thank you for the chance to see a different set of paintings than I would have expected. Gorgeous colors. I know, right? I have to say that I'm in love with this exhibition because of the colors, because it's so unexpected, and because of the curatorial work here. So also connecting it to the last question. The curator of this exhibition that you just saw and you walked through is by Trine Ottebakk Nielsen. And she's worked with this before in written work, and it's a fantastic story, and it's also so very relevant. And I think lots of people are now yearning to be, to take part in nature and to be a part of it, considering the way that we've been locked up. It's been a crazy time. So yeah, I think it's not only is a great summer exhibition, but it's also, we needed it now. All right, let's see. Did Munch know Van Gogh's work? This is by Augustine from Islip. Very good question. Yes. Edvard Munch was a man who, he was basically a sponge. He was very aware of the waves and the isms and everything that was going on around him in the art scene. He was very involved in, he was an avid art looker, so he used to look at different kinds of styles and different exhibitions, whether they were in cafes right next to exhibitions or like bigger spaces. And we actually had a Van Gogh Munch exhibition at the Munch Museum at Tøyen, and it was also in Amsterdam, I think, if I remember correctly. Let me see here. Oh, Margaret from Rincon says, you have been doing a great job. I enjoy your presentations. Thank you so much. That means a lot to hear that. It really does, because what the audience thinks is very important to me, and it's good to know that you feel that way. Thank you. All right, so let's see, Barbara from Florida says, thank you, that was lovely and very informative. How long was the scream away from the museum after being stolen? Great question. So thank you for that. And also, it was stolen in 2004, and it was gone for 2 years. So we got it back in 2006. there's very little that we know in terms of what it was exposed to. But when we got it back, we had paper conservators and painting conservators who were collaborating on this and trying to figure out and assess the damages done to the painting, so that they could find out what exactly were the damages. It's very interesting to see that the report on this, and then they found out that some things you could fix, other things you couldn't fix, which was very sad. But it's a part of the history of the object now. And this is also why we're extremely careful with the way that it's displayed. Some people want it displayed all the time, which we're trying to do now through the live stream that is on our homepage. So just go to munchmuseet.no or yeah, to check that out. But we're very careful with how it's displayed. The light has to be correct. The humidity, you can't take pictures with flash, for example. So we're quite careful and very not overprotective, but maybe overprotective. We have to be, because we wanted to survive the times. Let's see here. Okay, so Deborah from Richmond asks, did Munch use models for his paintings of people, or were these beautiful paintings done through imagination? So Edvard Munch does have a saying where he said, I do not paint what I see, I paint what I saw, which means that the things that he paints are very much connected to the emotions that he felt in that moment. But we do know that Edvard Munch used lots of models. He's very fond of them, actually. Both male and female, and he paid them. He was very respectful of his models. It's a very interesting relationship, that dynamic between model and artist in this case, because Edvard Munch had a lot of respect for them. Okay, let's see here. So Mitch from Pasadena asks, on the pure landscape you liked, I could not visualize what the very white blob was, but finally saw it as a puff of wind with leaves in it. Is that correct? Yes. There's a lot of movement in that painting, and that's why it's my favorite. There's something, it reminded me slightly of Japanese paintings, the way that it's the movements and the way that it kind of moved inwards. And yes, there's a lot of wind, there's a lot of movement. You can see the leaves and the flowers and the blossoming in that painting. Yes. I keep saying yes. At least I'm not saying which is great. Let's see here. Interesting. Now I'm wondering, so Susan from Austin asked this. In the painting of the boy swimming, I'm curious about the boy swimming out of the frame. It looks like as though he has facial hair. He seems to look much older than the other two boys. What do you think the dark paint all around his head and face is meant to portray? So, Susan, I'm not sure if you mean do you mean the one that is swimming upwards? Because in that case, you don't see the front of his face. You see the back of his face, if I remember correctly. You see the back of his body, and so that's the back of his head. But there's a boy who is standing upright, but he's looking out to the left, and he is quite red or like dark in the face. So Edvard Munch, he does this a lot with the paintings or and the paintings that has to do with the bathing motifs, and we see that this is sort of the characters, subjects there, sunburnt from the sun, and I love this because it's a beautiful beautiful way to comment that, yes, the face is always exposed to the sun and the rest of the body is hidden. And there are some paintings where you see that the hands are a bit red, and the neck is a bit more red. The faces are often red in those paintings. Let's see here. I need to scroll down. Is public nude sunbathing socially acceptable in Norway, either today or in the time of Munch's paintings? This is written by Ken from Seattle. I wouldn't say so. So Edvard Munch, the way that he painted those were, with children, sure, back then. Today as well. Children just bathe naked. Many of them do. That's fine. At least in the places I've been, but not adults. Not really. Sun tanning is one thing, but not bathing. Not that I know of. However, there is the case of Munch's time. So he painted them in his own estate, or the place that he lived. So that was a private estate. So he knew that was private and he could paint them. And there are many people who have written that, yeah, they remember that Munch used to paint them, which in hindsight is it's quite strange, but it was the culture for it. Let's see. How is your museum dealing with visitation during COVID-19? This is from Robert from Forest Hills. Great question. We are careful. We didn't open until, I don't remember when it was, but I think it was the 15th or 17th of June. And what we did was, now we have time slots. So when you book your tickets online, you book your way into a certain time of when you visit the museum. And if you just show up, you buy tickets at the door, but it depends on how many people are in the museum. I think we can be maximum 50 people on the first floor or in the room. And so we kind of regulate how many people are inside, and we're quite careful. There's antibac, don't remember what it's called, and there's also possibility to wash our hands, and we're quite careful with everything right now. When will the new museum open? How long will it take to transfer all of the artwork to the new location? This is from Brenda from California. Difficult to say. We've said fall, this fall, but it's, you never really know. But yeah, we say fall. And then there is, how long will it take to transfer all of the artwork to the new location? We have a whole team that pack all of these paintings and transport them. We don't know how many they do at a time and when they do it because of security. That's not something that Barbara, who is the project leader, can just tell us, I think. But it will take some time. It has taken some time. And of course, we're going to be very careful with the paintings. And they need to be put in place in the new museum. And then we can finally open. Okay, so Karen from Rochester says, I was a little late. Is the scream representing someone screaming or someone hearing a scream? That's the discussion. That's what we still discuss. And that's what's fun with Edvard Munch, because you don't know. I mean, we don't really know, and that's up for interpretation, whether the scream is from nature, and that's what's twisting it and making it turn that way, that it's sort of from like the sound waves in a way, or if it's from the figure itself and they're just closing their ears from the noise that is happening around them. But I mean, it's however you want to interpret it, isn't it? Let's see here. Yes. Okay, so Barbara from Berkeley, hi Barbara, asks, did Munch respond to the Spanish flu epidemic through any of his works? Thank you so much for your excellent commentary. Thank you so much. So yeah, he did. He absolutely did. He painted one of his self-portraits is from the Spanish flu. So if you write Edvard Munch self-portrait Spanish flu, you will find that. But it's still discussed whether or not Edvard Munch did have the Spanish flu. I can't answer on that, but he did definitely paint during that time, and he commented on it, or it was, yeah, not commented, but reflected through his self-portrait, if you can call that commentary. Let me see, I will check if there are any more questions. Okay, so Lynn from NYC asks, in the Impressionist painting of the woman in the field, there is a ghost-like image. Can you say more about it? So the reason to why it's so ghost-like, I'm assuming that you're thinking about In Open Field, which is the name of the painting, right? In that painting, what we see is it's painted in an impressionistic style. So Edvard Munch was inspired by many different impressionists when he was in Paris during that time, when he was learning academic painting. And he saw this style around him. It wasn't just one painter who did it, there were many people that he saw doing this around him. And he copied that, and that was his true break from realism and how he painted and how he was supposed to paint in Christiania and elsewhere. But ghost-like is very interesting because, yes, it does look a bit ghost-like. And that has to do with the way that not only does the landscape itself slightly disappear with the short brushstrokes, but there's always the fact that the woman herself is very pale and her face is kind of disappearing, even though she's in the front. Yeah, but whether or not this was on purpose, I'm not sure. Okay, this is from James from Ames. Can you speak to Munch's personality, how he interacted with the public? Did he have political views, etc.? Well, the political views, no. I don't know that he had, like, he was a very private person. We have to remember this. He was very, he had, during his older age, when he lived at Ekeli for the remaining 28 years of his life, he had a fence around his villa, the Swiss-style villa that he lived in. He also had a kennel with dogs in it, and he had a bell on the fence. So he would always hear when people approached, and he was very careful with who he approached as well, and who he let inside of his home. He was he had very few good friends, I would say. He portrays himself to be very mysterious during his younger time. Very mysterious, very quiet, observant. But he was very warm to his friends, and he had lots of humor. People don't know this about Edvard Munch, but he had a lot of humor. Strange humor, though. For example, one of his models had recounted how Edvard Munch laughed really loudly when one of his models appeared on his porch, and his dog started to like try to jump on her and was running after her and everything. And Edvard Munch found this so funny. Another funny story about Edvard Munch is that he was very animated in the way that he spoke to his friends. And from what I've read that his guests have written, he was a great host. He would offer everything that he had in his home. He was very warm that way. He was warmest to his closest, but he would keep other people a bit with a distance, I would say. Yeah. All right, let me see. Catherine from Swansea asks, how many copies of the Scream does the museum have? And how many copies are there all together? So I wouldn't say copies, I would say versions, because all of these there are different versions. Edvard Munch, there are 4 screens. 2 are on pastel, and 2 of them are oil on either canvas or cardboard. So the ones that the Munch Museum have, the ones that we were given through the will of Edvard Munch, there are 2. One is on pastel, and one is oil tempera on cardboard, which is also what makes it difficult to take care of it, because of the way, not only the way that it has been damaged, but also how it's aging, and also just the fact that he painted on cardboard, which is quite bizarre. And we do not know why he painted on cardboard. Some people say that it might be the fact that he didn't have anything else. Some people say that perhaps he did it on purpose. All right. Oh, is that much already? All right. I think this is it. Thank you so much for following this Q&A. I hope that it was fun for you, as it was for me. I had a lot of fun, actually. I hope you're all well and that you're being careful. And I hope to see you soon.